believe
Cool.
we are live. Hello, everyone. I am Shane from iTube4Tourettes, and we have Jackie,
Hi, I'm Jackie.
and you are known as what, Jackie?
On Facebook, known as A Little Bit Different.
And we have Kaylee.
Hi. Hi.
She's got her own YouTube thing.
Yeah, I'm Box Nahili 281 and 282 on YouTube. Long story why there's two, but yeah.
And today we are talking about Tourette's in college. And I think we've each had different experiences in college. I've had lots of positive experiences. Kaylee has had different experiences, and Jackie herself has different experiences too. Oh yeah, they can't see you nodding.
Oh, right.
Some of the topics we're going to hit, did I already say these? I'll just say them again. School accommodations, reactions from other people, whether they're negative or they're positive, and how they impact us as persons who have Tourette syndrome, and anything else in between. It's basically just going to be a conversation. So for me, I've had really positive experiences at school. I start out every semester now with a personal letter to every student and teacher in my class. I'm also specifically in American Sign Language interpreting programs, which means I also have interpreters in my classroom sometimes. So I have to carry extra papers with me of that letter to give to any new interpreter that may be sitting in that day to work for my teacher who is deaf. And it's been a really awesome experience. We've gotten around to calling it the charity letter because one interpreter didn't realize what the letter was for, and she thought it was a charity letter of me begging for money. And I'm like ticking in class, and you know the interpreters have to decide whether or not to interpret my tic, and the one interpreter is like, why is she doing that? And the regular interpreter was like, did you read the letter?
Like, don't interpret my tics, yeah?
Well, that's also the thing. Like, my teacher, the first semester I was with her, she's like, oh, I want your tics interpreted because I don't have the opportunity to choose whether or not to listen to them because I'm deaf.
True,
I don't have
yeah.
that choice.
True.
But this past semester, they've just sort of let them go. They haven't really interpreted them.
I guess depending on how frequent they are, it might just be sort of extraneous.
Yeah, it really is really extraneous information, especially if it's like one time I said, I have echolalia. So my teacher said something about a certain page in a book, and I said, mom, cat, page. And so the interpreter is sitting there being like, and my teacher just stared at her. And then she was like, oh, it's irrelevant information. It's just a tic.
Yeah.
Because the context made no sense. Yeah. So that's
That is
like
really interesting.
Yeah. And it's a situation you never thought of before. And when I encountered this situation, I wasn't able to find information online of other people experiencing this. I found a little blurb about something similar, but there was no article, there was no reference on where to find that information.
No.
So I was sort of on my own, pioneering.
But
anybody else have any really interesting, odd experiences that other people with TS might not have in college?
Well, once I had met with my chemistry professor before going to class. You know, I thought I'd explained everything pretty sufficiently. You know, I show up in my wheelchair, jerking around with my service dog. You know, everything seems cool. And then I hear from Disability Services, the day after the first day of class, the professor went to Disability Services and said, her service dog's barking. It barked all through the lecture. And then she got on the floor and played with it. And
Oh my god!
I just burst out laughing. Me and the two Disability Services people just flipped. I'm like, and then the Disability Services lady she said, yeah, it wasn't that. It was really funny, though, because I thought I'd been clear, but because what had happened was I was making noises, and then I needed to get on the floor so he could do full deep pressure. It was very unexpected interpretation. Anyway, that was just one of the funnier incidents.
Can you explain to our audience specifically what an across is, what that task is, and how it helps you as a person with Tourette syndrome to have a service?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you right now.
Can you explain what an across is to our audience?
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, what?
I think she's frozen.
Okay, well, I'll explain it. Kaylee's service dog, Mac, is trained to assist her with her Tourette syndrome, and one of his tasks is an across, which is deep pressure therapy, where Kaylee lays on the floor and the service dog lays on top of Kaylee, and it calms down her tics. And that is basically what happened in class for her. Yep. Kaylee, you're back? Are you back? I think you're back.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, I just explained to our audience what an across is.
Sorry, network's kind of bad.
Yeah. Awesome. How about you, Jackie? Have you had any funny awkwardness?
The only time, I think, in college at least, the only time I've had funny awkwardness, well, I too go into all my professors and I tell them all that I have Tourette's and I explain what it is, and most of them pretty much get it after that and then don't comment on my tics in class or anything like that, or don't pay any attention to them. But I had one professor, last semester who, I guess, like, he was pretty used to my tics because I did like a lot of vocal tics in class and he was pretty used to them, but I guess like one vocal tic he wasn't used to because he hadn't heard it before, and it was like my whistling tic. It kind of sounds like a bird, I guess. So he, I guess, like, thought there was a bird in the classroom or something, even though he knew I had Tourette's, like, didn't know I was making the sound. So, I think we lost Kaylee.
It's okay, I'll re-invite her.
Okay. So, he kind of kept repeating, is there a bird in the classroom? Where is the bird? And then I think most of the students got that it was one of my tics, but he like wasn't catching on. So he, like, throughout the class, he just like kept repeating like 3 or 4 times, "Does anyone else hear that bird? Am I going crazy?" And eventually I just said, "Oh, it's one of my tics." And he like later apologized. Not that exciting, but that's like the only time a professor has actually reacted in class to one of my tics. Because the rest of them just like ignore it.
Yeah, for me, I had with my psychology professor, I didn't arrive early enough to class. I usually try the first day of class to come early so that I can give them the letter and introduce myself and explain to them that I'm handing the same letter to every single person in the classroom. But my room got switched a couple of days before school started, so I was sitting in the wrong classroom while class was starting, and it wasn't until the professor walked in and he looked like he was Swedish, so I was like, "Is your name Heidi? Like, maybe it's a boy's name in Sweden, I don't know." And he's like, "No." The rooms got switched. And I'm like, "Oh." Freaked out. So I was sitting in class and I hadn't given the letter and my tics started and she was giving her syllabus introduction and she was just like, "Excuse me? Oh, sorry. What?" And I would just be like, never mind, never mind.
Yeah.
Like, she wasn't
Yeah.
being rude. It was just honestly, like, that's everybody's first reaction when, hey, welcome back. I was just telling about another college funny. So that was just like, you know, what else would you do if you don't know someone has Tourette's and they're saying something?
Yeah, I had a similar reaction in high school. I had an SAT teacher, and the SAT teacher like was one of my regular teachers, and
Cat, cat, cat.
I didn't tell them that I had Tourette's, because I don't know why I didn't tell the SAT teacher. I kind of thought that maybe it was just one or two classes. I didn't need to tell the professor, or the teacher, I guess, because it was in high school.
You really
And
thought that?
I don't know. I don't know. I thought I didn't need to tell them. So, like, halfway through the first class, like, he just kind of got fed up with me. And then he said, "Do you have a question, girl?"
Oh my gosh!
Who's making all the movements and sounds? Do you have a question? And I'm like, no. He's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yes. Yeah.
I'm kind of like the opposite. I have a hand-raising tic, so I never get caught on in class anymore.
Oh.
I had to sit in the back because of my wheelchair. It wouldn't fit down the stairs because this was an auditorium with all these steps. Anyway, so the professor had to make conscious effort to see me past everybody else. And they were like, speak up, you know, because they couldn't hear me all the way in the front of the room. So like, yeah.
Like, sir, you don't want me to speak up. I'm sorry. What else? Oh, I have a really funny one. So I've had this really old tic, my fire tic, and it came out of retirement this past year. And so at school, I'm like yelling, fire! And all of my classmates are in on it, you know, like I have Tourette's, so they're all laughing and stuff. But one time it happens, and my head is like pointed directly at the door, so it goes in the hallway. And these guys walk by, and they're like, with their head in the door, and I'm like, false alarm. And everybody's cracking up. And it happened in Walmart one time, like the middle of the night, I'm in Walmart, and I'm like, fire! And then I'm like, false alarm! And this woman from a different aisle, I can't even see her, she's like, thank you! Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I think my experience has been really positive and this is my second time trying college. I've been in college, community college before, and I didn't really take it seriously, but also at the same time, that's when my symptoms became really severe, and so I try to hide it at school a lot, and I was really coping with it being a new thing in my life. So
Yeah,
I didn't deal with it well. But this time around, I've been really open about my tics. I'm speaking openly in class, and people have been really receiving it well and very supportive, and it's just become sort of a highlight of the day for some people. They don't care about my Tourette's. They ask me to take tests with them, even though I still use my disability accommodations. For myself, it helps me to know that I'm not distracting other people. I can concentrate better. But it's been really positive, and people are great with it, and it's kind of like a fraternity.
Well, that's great.
Very, very fortunate. I'm kind of nervous about going to university, but the university I want to apply to has professors with Tourette syndrome there, and the director of the Tourette syndrome chapter out there is a professor on campus. And
well, it sounds like you'll be set.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's an amazing neurologist out there that I've already spoken to in person about my case, and he's interested. So I really hope I don't screw it up.
Well, it sounds like you got a great setup going.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Nervous. Hope it works out. But what about you guys? What about like reactions from other people for you guys? Because I
Mine,
mean, you said the funny stories, but there are
there's
harder.
lots of funny ones too.
Do either of you want to go first?
I can, I guess.
Okay.
Well, oh, sorry, were you gonna go, Jackie, or?
No, you can go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I've had some mixed reactions. People on an individual level have tended to be pretty awesome, but overall, it hasn't been what I had hoped. I essentially was removed from my chemistry class, the one where the teacher thought I was thought my service dog was barking. Um, and then this semester, I was removed from my anthropology because they could not. They received multiple complaints about my vocal tics, and then the professor eventually said that he just couldn't teach because I was so loud. And then that just sort of I had to Skype to class, although that posed significant limitations, and I ended up having to drop the class. And I haven't gotten my money back, so I haven't been very happy about that. It was, in fact, my only in-person lecture class this semester, and I was staying on campus, so that was a source of significant dissatisfaction for me. Uh, a bit of disappointment, but there's not much I can do, so. The good news is I have been doing well in my other classes. To
Oh,
which
that's great.
Anyway, yeah.
I'm glad you're doing really well in your other classes.
Yeah, me too. Okay,
Really.
I go now?
Yeah.
Okay. So, wait, what am I supposed to be talking about?
Oh, it's just reactions from other people.
Oh, reactions from other people?
In the college setting, though.
In the college setting, like students, like other students?
Students, professors.
Okay. So like I said before, I educate all my professors before I start classes, and all of them are pretty much really accepting of it. I only have that one professor. I've been in college 2 years, so this is I just finished my sophomore year, and I've only had that one professor who just commented on my tics that one time because he wasn't sure if it was a tic or not. But besides that, as soon as my professors know pretty much, they're very accepting of it. Some of them are curious and ask questions when I tell them about it. But in class, I haven't had any problems. I do a lot of my vocal tics in class. Sometimes I'm vocal ticking throughout an entire class. Sometimes I'll leave class if I feel like I'm ticking too much and need to walk around. But I haven't had any problems with that really. Other students are all very accepting in my classes as well. They pretty much, like, I'll usually, especially if it's a smaller class, I'll talk to the class and I'll give them a little short summary of what Tourette syndrome is and how it affects me, and then they understand after that. And they pretty much, I mean, sometimes I'll get a few stares in classes, but besides that, they're pretty much all really understanding. Other students on campus who I don't have class with sometimes will tend to stare, or like I've had a few situations with people on my floor. So like the beginning of this, the story that comes to my head is the beginning of this school year. We have like a floor meeting because I live in a dorm. Are
you in a sorority?
What?
I thought you were in a sorority.
Oh yeah, I am in a sorority, but at the college I go to, sororities don't have houses, because if like 8 or more girls live together in a building, it's considered to be a brothel for some reason, in the state I live in. So that's great. Yeah, I don't know what that's all about, but we're not allowed to have a sorority house. So I live in a dorm. All students live in dorms at the college I go to. So on the first floor meeting, we had most of the people from my floor were from my freshman floor, but there were a few people who were new who didn't know me before. And they were just kind of like stuck in on the floor. And they, they didn't know I had Tourette's. And so we were having this floor meeting, and during the floor meeting, I was doing this vocal tic that I don't have right now, but I had it in the beginning of the year. It's a vocal tic where I say, like, woof. And I say it kind of loud.
W-O-F-F or O-O-F?
Woof, like a dog barking, like woof.
Huh.
Like the word woof.
Wow.
Yeah. I actually picked it up from camp.
It happens.
Yeah, anyway.
Contagious.
So I was doing that tic, and I mean, the girl had a right to be confused. There's someone, you know, sitting there shouting out woof randomly, and she has no idea what's going on. Whereas all the other people there did know what was going on because they had known me the previous year.
Woof.
I don't want to catch it. I don't want to catch it.
Uh-oh. Sorry about that, Kaylee.
You're good.
Anyway, she kept staring at me, like not even like just kind of like staring out at the corner of her eye, but just like death glaring me, kinda. Just like looking me in the face and going like staring, like really staring. And all my friends were kind of noticed. Well, everyone was noticing she was staring, because she was doing it in a really obvious way, and kind of like giggling too. And we were all going around introducing each other, and I finally was just like fed up with her staring at me. So I was just like, oh, and by the way, I have Tourette's, which is why I'm saying the word woof over and over again. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry for staring at you, oh my gosh. And she kind of like made a scene. But that was more like her making a scene rather than me making a scene.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, my friends were all like, I was so mad at that girl who was staring at you. Oh my gosh, I'm like, you know, they were all like defending me and like wanting to go over and like explain. But I explained for myself, so it wasn't a problem.
See, my group of friends and classmates, we're kind of different on that front. Like, if somebody doesn't get it, it's their loss. Like, they're not in the club. So we laugh at them for not getting it.
I'm like that too. I mean, like, my friends tend to get more like standoffish when people are being, well, jerks, you know, over, you know, whatever. And I tend to encourage them to just, you know, like, it's okay. It's, you know, I deal with this every day. Well, for the rest of my life, what?
And if somebody wants to be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I had no idea, I would just want to be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, you have a farting problem. You know, tics, they're just like burping and farting. I've said that since I was 18.
That's a good simile.
It really is. It's just that I guess we burp and fart a lot.
It sort of captures the social awkwardness potential too.
Yeah. I don't want people to like pity me. I want them to sort of be like, oh, you know what I get, oh, my cousin has Tourette's. I can't tell you how many times I get that.
Me too.
There are so many people who have cousins with Tourette syndrome, apparently.
It's the same way for me, especially on my campus.
I almost wonder if they're telling the truth. Is this just the most common lie to tell to someone with Tourette syndrome, that you have a cousin with Tourette's, or is this for real? Because this is a lot more common.
I get it all the time, too. I really do. They say, oh, my younger cousin has Tourette's, but he's really little, or something like that. I've gotten that quite a lot.
I actually got that, too, from, like, somebody. It's funny, one girl that I'm friends with up the hall from me, eventually, I was like, well, yeah, I got Tourette's, and then after, like, the whole semester, she was like, yeah, I've got tics, too, and I'm like, yeah, it was funny.
There's someone in my class that she has blinking and sniffing tics, and, like, I was just like, aw, it's somebody like me, and they don't even know it.
Yeah, I met two people that have it too. So I mean tics, you know, tics too, not Tourette. Well, could be, you know, but they're not diagnosed officially.
Well, one time I was bold enough to go up to someone and be like, "Hi, my name is so and so. I was just wondering, do you have Tourette's?" And like, it actually turned out to be a mentally challenged individual, and I was so embarrassed. I'm like, okay, I'm never doing this again. If anybody actually has Tourette's and they want to talk about it, they're gonna either wear a bracelet or a T-shirt that says like Tourette's on it.
Or they'll be like, "Hi," you know.
I know. I don't talk to people that I think have Tourette's and say, "Oh, I think that you have Tourette's." Like, I don't do that anymore. One time, that was enough.
I did it once too, actually. I mean, I didn't have the courage to actually go up to them and say, "Do you have Tourette's?" But she's someone in my sorority, and I've noticed that she has like tics, and I was like, they're not really like super obvious to someone who doesn't know what tics are, but for someone who like knows what tics are, if they sit in a room with this other girl, they'd say, "Hey, that girl has tics."
Or it's a good indicator if their tics are setting off your tics.
Exactly, or if mine are setting off their tics. So anyway, I sent her a message on like Facebook because I didn't have the courage.
I got so emotional. Kayla, you're in a dystonic storm.
Anyway, so I sent her this message on Facebook, and then I'm like, I figured if I opened up to her, she'd say, "I have Tourette's too," or something like that. So I said, I just wanted, you know, I knew she had accommodations at our disability services. I'm like, I just wanted to let you know that if you have any questions about disability services, you know, definitely, you know, talk to me about it. I'd be willing to talk to you about it. I have Tourette's and OCD, and I just told her about it, like, randomly, and it seemed really random, but I assumed she would say, "Oh, I have Tourette's too," or "I have tics too," you know, but she didn't, and it was just really awkward, and it was basically me just going, "Hey, I have Tourette's," randomly, and she's like, "Cool."
Actually, you know, there's a lot of people that think Tourette's is actually cool. And not just because they think it's a license to swear. They're just like, "Oh, that's so cool."
I had one guy in like the common area that just like, he was like, "I'm pre-med," and he's like, "You know, if you don't mind, can I ask what you have?" And then I spent like the next like hour, because we were both free, just like telling him about Tourette's and the pathophysiology, and you know, it was just really, I like the science of it, and he did too, and he had a roommate with it, so it was like, cool, you know, hey, why not?
I always want to make like special press passes for people, like, "Yes, you have permission to stare at me for an entire week. Here you go." So we've like mentioned accommodations a few times in the past few minutes. So why don't we go on to that topic? So disability accommodations in college are different than what people get in high school. Of course, I never went to high school, so I wouldn't exactly know those accommodations, but I know that there are IEPs and 504s, but those do not exist in college. In college, what protects you is the Americans with Disabilities Act and some of Section 504, but it's not the same as in high school. And in college, at least I've gone to community colleges only at this point, and in college you basically have to get the special paperwork from your college. It's usually really simple. It just says you need a doctor to spell out what your either diagnosis or your symptoms are. Sometimes you have symptoms and you don't have a diagnosis yet. Diagnosis X. But to have them laid out and specifically what accommodations would be useful for you and how that relates to your symptoms. And then you take it to the disabilities counselor, you sit down and you get those accommodations arranged, and they talk about what's appropriate, what the school can arrange for you, and at least both of my experiences at two different community colleges, they've been very accommodating. Have you guys experienced the same thing with your initial setup for accommodations?
Sort of.
Sort of. I know you've had some struggles there.
Mine's been a little complicated, drawn out, you know.
How about the initial stuff? Because I know that the really hard stuff came later for you.
The initial was actually great. We requested a single dorm room for me because I'm so noisy and I have so many noise sensitivities comorbid to my tics, you know. Sensory noises set me off essentially with the tics. So we went ahead and requested a single room, especially with a service dog, and that has been awesome. Had no issues getting that. You know, and the disability services was really nice, really helpful to begin with. Yeah, just really personable staff, easy to talk to, which was great.
So those were your dorm accommodations, but you also had academic accommodations too, right?
Yeah, I have separate testing that I test at disability services if I so choose. Let's see, what else do I do? I tried an auditory device to help. Basically, I need an auditory device. It's a kind of complicated reason, but that we set that up. We set up where when I needed to be out of class, we set up Skyping to class, essentially, where they'd record it. The professor would record, you know, via webcam, and I would I'd you know, watch the class, and they got me notes. So in that respect, they've been very responsive, you know, and that's been good.
With the auditory device, did that help, or did you stop using it?
It was helpful, but for other reasons, I eventually had to leave that class.
Oh, okay. So then you
The
didn't.
auditory device on my part was awesome. It was fantastic. They were kind of reluctant to start that, but anyway, they got it in place. It was great.
What? Wait, what was it that they were reluctant to start?
The auditory device. For some reason, there was some sort of coordinating something they had to, I don't know. It was a little.
Did you get a cart operator or a stenographer to closed caption your class for you?
Neither of the above. I ended up using an auditory assist device that basically transmits the teacher's voice from a microphone to a headset for me.
Okay.
I wore that over an iPod, and that helped block out the noise triggers for me.
That's awesome. I'm so glad that idea helped.
Yeah, I'm going to use it whenever I go back in person too, because it's sort of the ticket for me, avoiding the sensory triggers.
I just wanted to bring up briefly, because of something you said, for anyone watching, college accommodations, definitely if you need them or you think you might need them and you have a diagnosis, get them set up, because you can choose not to use them. For me, I have testing accommodations, which includes I need to use a computer because I have problems with writing that are unrelated to my Tourette's syndrome. So I need to type. I also need extended time in case I do need a handwrite. I have to have extra time for that because it's very painful for me. 3, I need the extra time in case my tics or some of my other medical problems cause me, you know, to fall behind on the clock while taking my test. And it also eases my anxiety. I have these medical conditions. I know that they can interfere with my ability to finish the test, but it helps that anxiety be relieved when I have that extra time. Most of the time, I don't need the extra time. I'll try to take advantage of it if I can, but a lot of times I do finish on time. It's just having it really gives me that buffer of relief in case something does happen. Additionally, I test in a private room away from other disabled students who would be distracted from my tics. And this also allows me to give some respite to my classmates. Even though they don't care about my tics, I care about them being able to concentrate during their test. And if I'm worrying about them, then I'm not concentrating on my own test. So that helps. I forget if there's anything else. I think I have like preferential seating for some circumstances. In my ASL classes for the test, most people, they write their test answers on their lap, and I can't do that. So they'll bring a table in for me to be able to write on in the middle of the classroom for ASL. What about you, Jackie? Do you have any accommodations?
Yes, I do. I actually came into college with accommodations because in high school I had accommodations as well. So in high school I had extended time for any test, and that's, you know, similar reasons as Shane mentioned. You know, tics interfering with the timing. If I'm ticking, it takes me longer. Also anxiety. I had a lot of panic in high school, like panic attack disorder. I don't have any panic attacks anymore, but in high school I had a lot of panic attacks, and I would often have a panic attack in the middle of exam. and that would make it really hard for me to finish the exam, so I'd have to like leave the room, calm down, then come back. So extra time was of course needed for that. I also had a separate room that I tested in high school, only for major exams though. For like small quizzes, I just stayed in the classroom. But for major exams or anything like that, I would go to a separate room. In college, so I came in with those accommodations. I told my college that I had. I told my college
Lobster.
that.
Lobster!
Lobster!
I told my college I had those accommodations, and they were very good about them. They gave me all the accommodations that I needed, extra time. For some reason, I was over optimistic and thought that I wouldn't need a private testing room in college for some reason. I thought, oh, like I'll be able to do my exam with everyone else, and I'll like be better about taking in that situation. But it didn't really work out that way. So I started taking them with everyone else, and well, it was not everyone else. It was small group setting in the disability. What's it called?
The Disability Center on Disability office.
Yeah, disability office. I would take it in small group settings.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't really work. I definitely had to move to a private room because
Bitches.
sometimes people had to move out of my room. I was ticking, I was distracting them, so they had to leave.
Yeah, you seem to have a lot of these optimistic moments that just don't work out. I almost feel like the best way to be optimistic is being pessimistic. Like I said, get everything arranged in the beginning and then choose to use it later. The thing is, for those watching, if you have testing accommodations, what's very common, at least at the community colleges, is that you have to schedule your test with the disability office. So it's not like the night before or the morning of, you're like, oh my gosh, my tics are really bad today. I need to be in that private room. No, you have to have that arranged 3 days in advance because your professor has to send the test to the office. They have to proctor the test for you. They have to have the room for you and all of this stuff. So you have to plan ahead. So pessimism can be optimism.
Yeah, so it was definitely a much better thing for me to move to a private room. And now I take all my exams in the Disability Services office in a private room. Yeah.
I forgot 2 of my accommodations. One of my accommodations is I can leave the classroom for any reason at any time that I wish without explaining myself. And another accommodation, basically that's called taking a break. But my other accommodation is I'm allowed to have technology in the classroom. I'm allowed to have my iPad to take notes. I'm allowed to have a laptop to take notes. All that jazz. Forgot about those.
Yeah, I have those too. I almost take them for granted, although at my school it's like not a big deal if you leave. I mean, you know, because mine's like a university, so a lot of people just get up and go to the bathroom. Although, yeah, like the technology, like I had one professor that was like freak out if you had a phone out, but like they knew that I had to have like my electronics, so yeah.
Yeah. And for me, I was in honors one semester, and the honors program is really strict. If you leave the classroom during a non-break period, then you're not allowed back in the classroom until the next break. So it was kind of a big deal. And I actually did not take advantage of my breaks during that semester. I actually did really well because they gave us sufficient breaks. But it's really good to have that board.
Fuck!
Also, communicating with professors is so important because if anything does go wrong and they already know your situation, they'll be way more forgiving. And there were a couple of times, for reasons other than Tourette syndrome, that I politely asked if I could leave early for the day without it affecting my grade, and they said, go ahead, that's fine, because they knew the different things going on in my life, especially medically, and they were able to be reasonable with that and say, yes, you can leave early for the day. We will not deduct it from your grade.
Oh, I have another accommodation that I forgot as well. I forgot, but I do have a flexibility with attendance as well. Like you.
How does that work? How does that work? Because I know a lot of people that need it.
Yeah. So basically, how it works is some of my classes, for example, my poetry class. There's a rule at the beginning of the year that's set, and the professor will tell you this, that you can only miss 3 classes, and if you miss any more than 3, your grade will drop a whole letter grade.
All of my classes have that rule.
None of your classes have that rule?
All of my classes have that rule. It's either 3 or 4 days.
Okay, yeah. So some of my larger lecture classes, they don't care if you don't attend. Like, you could, like, seriously, like, never go to class and then take the exam, and they wouldn't care. If you pass the exam, you pass the class. But other classes like poetry, you miss 4, and then your grade drops.
I'm gonna fucking kill you.
So
really?
I have a flexibility with attendance. So basically, if I have a day where my tics are really bad, or for example, a lot of times my tics will be really especially bad at night when I'm trying to fall asleep. So I like won't get a lot of sleep. So the next morning I won't like. My tics will be even worse, and it's just like a perpetuating cycle. If I have to get up early and go to class and my tics are worse because I didn't sleep the night before because my tics were bad that night, it like is a perpetuating cycle that just gets worse and worse and worse. So it's just better for me to take that day off if I haven't slept at all the night before because my tics were so bad. And that happens less often now because I'm on a medication that helps me sleep at night, a low dose of clonidine, and it helps my tics at night. So, but I still have accommodations set up in case I were to need it. So basically, I just email my professor, tell them I'm not feeling well, and they interpret that as, oh, it's one of, you know, your accommodation is coming into play here, where we won't deduct, we won't use this class as something that would deduct from your grade. So I can basically miss as many days, you know, reasonably.
Yeah.
And it won't affect my grade.
I noticed that, now I don't have this accommodation, but I was wondering if it existed because I have other medical reasons that I would need to use it. But I noticed that if I have a doctor appointment that I absolutely cannot schedule around my class, then all my teacher required was to have a doctor's note from the office, and she wouldn't count it against my, you know, my minimum classes missed, you know, the maximum classes that you can miss for the period, the 3 or 4, it wouldn't count against that. So maybe I missed school 3 times for doctor's appointments, but in reality, I had 0 absences, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's like how it is.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's like how it is for me. I'll miss class like maybe 5 times a semester because my tics are bad, and then but I have 0 absences.
Same for me, yeah.
You have that as an accommodation, or you've just noticed that if you have a doctor's note, it doesn't count against?
My university doesn't care if it's a doctor, like the way my university is set up, they will count it against you unless it's like a specific accommodation. I think it would vary from school to school.
I'm so nervous about this university switch. I'm taking a year off from school to basically prepare for stuff.
Yeah, my college is technically a university, so 4-year university.
Mine is too, yeah.
I have a question. Now, the college I'm looking into, they have a sorority, and you know what? What you said, Jackie, about not having any sorority houses because 8 girls living together is considered a brothel. Well, I noticed that the college I'm looking at, they'll have fraternity houses, but there aren't any sorority houses. So I wonder if there's a similar law. But the school has an entire half of a dorm building reserved for the sorority. So it's just the girls that belong to that sorority
Oh,
living in that dorm building. And I really wanted to join a sorority because I like the idea of the fellowship. I like having a temporary family with similar goals. But I was also wondering if it would help with the whole Tourette syndrome issue, if there would be more acceptance, if it would work out better. What do you guys think?
I think it would depend on the way your school, I mean, how sort of the atmosphere is, because at my school, the sororities tend to be kind of,
Floozy?
well, sort of, but they seem to value conformity strongly at my school, and it's not something that I'm interested in the way the sororities at my school are. I'm sure they're different at different schools, but I think it will depend on the atmosphere of your school. There's sort of these intangibles that are,
Well,
you know,
it would be half of the persons, at least half, probably more of the persons in this sorority are deaf or hard of hearing. So I thought that would be especially helpful with the whole vocal tics thing if more than half of the people in my building were deaf or hard of hearing.
yeah, that would cut down on possible noise complaints.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would say so. I'd say every sorority is different, and every like sorority scene at every college is different. Um, Personally, I didn't tell um my sorority when I was originally pledging um about my Tourette's, but I think most of them have kind of picked up that, I mean, some of them I've told directly, and some of them some of
Bitches!
them I still some of them I still haven't told. But I
For
think the people
real?
I haven't told kind of assume something's different about me. The people I have told, no. But overall, they're accepting. I haven't had any problems. But I think every sorority is different.
I have to ask this because my initial reaction would be to wear a Camp Twitch and Shout Tourette's Ticks Me Off t-shirt during my pledge
Ah!
or anything I do where I'm going to be in direct contact with people and I need to make a first impression. I want my first impression to be I have Tourette's and I can still act like a normal person even though I'm ticking. And it's totally okay that you know this because I'm wearing it across my chest here. Like, how do you guys feel about that? Do you feel like you want to keep it more private? Because, Jackie, you seem more of the private type that waits until the right moment. And for me, it's like, well, I'm, unless I'm having a really good day where I'm not taking at all, it's usually one of the things that I bring up if I'm going to know these people for a while.
I I tend not to have to educate because I use very visible mobility equipment and I have the service dog. I don't know. I've sort of fallen into. I mean, I don't really actively educate much. People tend to see the wheelchair and the dog and go, okay, something's up, and I just sort of leave it at that. Like if I'm out and about. Although like when I like at orientation for moving in, I told people in the dorm area like I was yelling, I'm gonna fucking kill fuck. I was yelling coprolalias, I'm gonna kill you. I was like I got Tourette's, and that just sort of that was sort of my hey, heads up thing. I tend not to talk about it. It's just sort of a fact. I'm very open about it if anybody has questions, but I tend to just sort of let it speak for itself.
For me,
I think that's personal.
during a job interview, I actually try to hide it and I didn't say anything about it. But when I meet people, if I have a tic, then I say, by the way, I have Tourette syndrome. So if you hear me say certain things or do certain movements, whatever my cocktail is for that day,
Yeah.
I'll explain it to them. But usually I might wait until the first tic, especially if it's a short-term interaction.
Yeah, I do a similar thing. I'll usually wait until I tick
Yeah.
my tick. Or if I tick, they'll immediately say something like, "Oh, are you okay?" Or they'll make some sort of comment.
I think the most common comment I get is Gesundheit or God bless you.
Oh, yes.
Even if it's not a sneezing or a coughing tic, they say like God bless you.
Same. Like, I have this squeaky tick where I go, ah! Like that, and people think I'm sneezing, so they say, bless you. And sometimes I'll just let it go, and then other times I'll take it as an opportunity to say, oh, it's actually a tick, and then explain.
Here's a question. Do you feel that people's reactions to your tics and their acceptance of your tics really affects you and impacts you and is a reflection on how you feel about yourself? Because for me, I've noticed that I accepted my tics when I noticed other people accepting me, like it was okay, and they were okay with me, and then I started being okay with myself. And now I don't understand why, but God has blessed me with the craziest tics that people just fall in love with. I have very complex vocal tics, and they love them. And the fact that they love them and they find them funny in a good way, it I don't feel bad about my tics, and I don't feel bad about myself. And the only time I feel bad about my tics is maybe if I'm having a very significant tic attack that causes me frustration, then that would be the only circumstance in the past couple of years. Otherwise, I've been pretty positive about it, and that's a real blessing. Do you guys feel the same way? Like it's other people that determine how you feel about your tics, or do you feel that it's you yourself that determines how you feel about your tics?
A little of both for me, although I've had very prominent tics for years now. At first it was really difficult, but once I came to really accept it, it really, I feel like now, since I just sort of roll with it, I think people get the idea and just sort of, hey, whatever, just sort of go with it.
Yeah, I feel like I'm very affected by other people's reactions. But all my friends are so accepting, and then that I see they're accepting, and similar to Shane, when I see they're accepting, I'm more accepting of myself. I tend to get frustrated with my tics when they're painful, or like if I'm having a significant tic attack and it's causing me pain, or like the tics where I hit myself. Those are like painful. And that's when I get like frustrated with my tics. Or if I'm taking a law in class, I sometimes like will feel like different, or if people are staring or laughing, and then I'll feel self-conscious about it or embarrassed about it. But when I'm around my friends and like when I'm around people who understand, like I tend to accept myself and accept it. I've become a lot more accepting of it over the past couple of years, especially going to camp last year.
Isn't it awesome?
Really that confidence booster.
That first time at camp changes everything.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it changed a lot for me. I think it was the first time my tics were ever like, you said this in your other video, Shane, where you were talking you were talking in the presentation video that you made to the class. You were talking about how you have to be kind of in the club to understand this, but camp is the first place where your tics are almost like praised.
Yeah, they're like your name badge.
Yeah, and that was like really cool because that has never happened to me in my life. And people would like come up to me like and say, "Oh, I really like your tics," or like.
I know, isn't it so weird?
And there it's clearly not being a jerk. I mean, like,
It's so weird.
He looked over at me at the closing ceremonies, and he's like, "I just wanted to tell you, I think your tics are really cool." And I didn't know what to say to that, so I was just like, "Yours too." It was so cute.
Like, I think second or third day of camp, two of my campers who are, I have older campers. Well, I did last year. Two of my campers called me over to their bed and said, "Jackie, come over here, come sit with us." And they said, "We just wanted to tell you, we think your tics are really cool." I'm like, "Oh, you guys are so sweet." And then
you just want to hug them.
Yeah, I just wanted to hug them. They're so sweet. And then I was in the nurses. I was in the nurses office thing, and Jason was in there. I don't know if we should be saying names, but he's a counselor. It's fine.
Yeah, anyone over 18 is cool.
Yeah. So anyway, well, he's the head of the camp, really, now. Yeah. But he came over to me, he's like, I love your ray gun. I'm like, my ray gun? What are you talking about, my ray gun? And I thought one of my tics sounded like a ray gun.
Oh.
So he said, I like your ray gun.
Like,
yeah, I guess it was, whatever I was doing at that time sounded like a ray gun.
Isn't it weird how some of the tics that we make, the sounds that are created, we can't create voluntarily, but we can tic them?
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Like, I didn't know how to make, it was funny, at the talent show, I made noises because people were like, that's so cool, you sound just like, fill in blank of noise. And I was like, I'm going to do that at the talent show this year. So that was funny, but yeah.
Yeah, you made your routine more of a comedy act than an impressions act. It was awesome. That's so cool.
I got the idea because, people were like, oh, that's so cool, how do you do that? I've had people, like my friends at school, they're like, or I'll hear people be like, where's the dog? And I'm like, it's like kids back, like, years ago even would be
bitches!
like,
I love bitches. Oh my gosh. Cat, cat, cat. Sorted. Okay. That just went live. Okay. So I wanted to talk about immunity. Have you guys found, I know Kaylee hasn't, but maybe you have experience with Kaylee, where your classmates become immune to your tics. I've noticed that, well, starting college over again, I decided not to hold back my tics, and because I discovered at counselor training for camp last summer that I was able to concentrate better when I was letting all my tics out, but I was still focusing on the speaker who was training us. So for school, I decided to take that approach, and it's worked out wonderfully for me. I've paid attention more than I ever have in my life, and my classmates have seemed to develop basically this immunity to my tics, to the point where I'll be ticking and ticking in class, and my teacher is deaf, okay? And we're not allowed to have cell phones on in class. She actually likes them completely off, not even on vibrate. But I'll be ticking, and then somebody's cell phone rings, and everybody looks at it. But they didn't look at me when I was ticking. I'm like, you guys, she wouldn't have even known that a cell phone went off if you just kept staring at the teacher. Like, they were completely immune to my tics, but a cell phone going off totally threw them off. So there's, like, this immunity. It's like they don't even hear my tics anymore. And I was wondering if you guys have experienced that, because it's been beneficial to the classroom environment. Even the teacher has said, thank you so much for being in class. It taught my students how to concentrate under distraction. And I was like, really?
And it teaches acceptance. You're in a course where that would be, paramount for, working with, populations with diversity.
Yeah, well, the teacher that said that was my speech teacher, so I was ticking during other people's speeches, but I wouldn't tick during my own.
Yeah.
Like the magic wand effect.
Yeah.
There was one speech where I gave my classmates tics. I wrote a tic on an index card for each of them to have, and that threw me off. I couldn't concentrate whatsoever on my speech with everybody saying my tics to me. Maybe if I chose some nondescript tics that I never had, but they were my tics, and they were setting me off, and
that would totally, like, psych me out.
Yeah.
It weirded me out. But it's like, I do find at camp Push and Shout, there's tics all the time, and I have no problem, but when my own class is ticking at me,
Maybe because it keep you, sorry.
Like, I don't know. So have any of you noticed that kind of immunity to tics?
Yeah, in high school, it was like all the time in high school. My class desensitized. That's the psychology word for it, where you just desensitize to it. And sorry, psych major, but yeah, I had that in high school completely. Everybody in my classes were just totally cool with it. Nobody looked. I could yell. Nobody looked. Past like
Bitches!
the first. What? I haven't had that opportunity in college because of the limitations posed by the college environment for me, but yeah, it's it's a really cool thing when, you know, you're completely normal, you know, in a setting. It's really liberating, you know, when you get stared at in public.
Yeah.
But school was a safe place for me in high school. That was great.
I actually wanted to comment on something you said earlier about having the wheelchair and the service dog, and something you said reminded me of something I felt when I was going through the process of deciding to have a service dog and applying for one, is that when I have this service dog with me and I'm taking in public, people are going to see the service dog and just figure in their mind, well, she obviously knows that there's something wrong with her, so I can just stop staring or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, as soon as there's that visual clue of a disability, people's approach to it changes, and you'll see with a service dog, they're not looking at you. They are looking at the, you know, the big gorgeous dog.
Mr. Fuzzy.
Yeah, it's like, oh, gorgeous dog. Oh, thanks. You know, they're not like, you know, like, what's wrong with her? They're like, oh my gosh, she has a dog. That's so awesome. You know, people say they want a dog. They wish they could have a dog in their dorm too. So yeah, it really changed the social aspect for me. It was it's been one of the best things that's ever happened to me. I'm getting a service dog.
That's so cool. Because, like, some people are like, well, when you get a service dog, it makes people know that you have a disability. But for people like us, where our medical conditions can be really obvious but confusing, at least having that indicator is like, well, at least they know that there's something wrong with them. As if we wouldn't.
Especially having to explain every time. You know, or at least as much. I have people say, "You're not blind, are you?" I'm like, "No." I often ignore that, but you know, it helps.
So, Jackie, for you, have you noticed any sort of immunity to your tics by people around you?
Oh yeah, definitely. All of my friends, you ask them, you know, like they'll often say to me, you know, oh, I don't notice your tics, like, that often, because they're like just really, I mean, my tics are noticeable, but they just don't notice them anymore because they're so used to them, or they just blend into the background. Also in my classes throughout high school and college, you know, I would tell my classes that, you know, I have Tourette's. First couple days I get a few stares, like they're like surprised by the noise, they weren't expecting it, and they turn around. But after like 2 or 3 times, you know, they get used to it, and like by the end of the semester or the end of the class I'm in, it will, like, no one's noticing it, no one's turning their head, no one's paying any attention to it. You know, it's just normal.
Isn't it cool? It's kind of like how at camp where it's like you don't even have tics. Of course you're having tics, but nobody's turning around to look at them unless it's a really cool one. Or some people had some tics where it seemed dangerous, but other than that.
Yeah. Yeah, like sometimes like my friends won't really comment on any of my tics at all unless I have a new tic. So like I'll have a new tic pop up, and like one of my friends make a comment like oh, that was a cool one, or you should do that one in class sometime. I don't know, something funny or something.
I know people, they try to request tics. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not a DJ. My tics don't take requests.
Yeah, like when I had the Woof tic, one of my friends was always telling me, oh, change it to meow.
Really?
He thought he was being funny, I guess, by saying that, but I don't know, I didn't think it was that funny, but it was like, okay, it's fine, you know.
I was going to say something, I can't remember. Oh, have you ever had this where somebody comes up to you and they're like, I just wanted to let you know, I think you're doing so great with this whole Tourette syndrome thing. I didn't even see you tic once a day. And I'm like, really? Like, I can count 30 times where I ticked that probably weren't vocal, but it was still happening. They'll just be like, and you didn't tick at all. And I'll be like, sure, go ahead and think that.
My reaction to that, and it's usually people that know me, they're like, oh, you're doing great. I'm like, don't say that, because as soon as you say it, you know, it's suggestibility, it's going to happen. It's like, no, you jinxed it.
Bitches, I love it. just had a symmetry headbang. Ow.
And it also to me highlights how they don't understand the fundamental. It gets better, it gets worse, it gets better, it gets worse. Nature of it, it's like.
Especially with girls, with our hormones. Oh my word.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's like, yeah, it's bad.
One of the interpreters came up to me once. She's like our regular interpreter that is in class more often than the others. And she came up to me and she's like, I just had to ask, is there anything that makes your Tourette's worse? And I'm like, oh yeah. And she said, because they're a lot worse this semester. And I was like, that's because this semester started on the last week of the month.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That does it to me too. Like, I got terminated twice last month on that week. That was bad.
I just noticed this program that we're making right now is very unique in that it's 3 girls with Tourette's, and Tourette syndrome is not considered as prevalent in women as it is in men or boys.
There's like
it's college students. There are very few resources for college students with tics.
What? And we're having a good variety of, severity and such.
Yeah, we're like, I don't know. I don't want to like arrange us by severity or anything, but we have a big variety.
It's like a good spectrum, It's not just, we all have different issues with it. It's a good sampling.
Yeah, we all like have different tics, and well, we haven't talked any about associated conditions actually.
Yeah.
I don't even want to get into associated conditions for this.
That's like a whole series.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's too much.
Maybe another broadcast.
I could go on for years just about my tics.
Yeah, I think we should keep doing this because there are so many resources for parents. There are so many resources for the 7-year-olds and the newly diagnosed. But
we need them by people with Tourette's, for people with Tourette's, at our age group, adults with Tourette's.
In our age group specifically, which is college age, but also for adults with TS. There are a lot of people that grow out of Tourette syndrome, or they just learn how to manage it as, the hormones wear off after adolescence. But there are still people out there that are dealing with this as adults, and they don't have anyone or anything.
Yeah, or it may be that, sorry.
Go ahead.
It may be that they're milder. It may not be, that they may improve, but there may still be, new issues from time to time, even for those that do mostly outgrow it, like job interviews or, any sort of thing. It waxes and wanes and tics change and, just so forth. Every situation is different with, even for me, like, what's a problem here is not a problem there, and I think having that resource for adults, who have more, we have insight into our own, issues and, helping other people figure out how to solve problems as they come up, I think that's really invaluable.
And not to scare people to think, oh my gosh, I'm going to be a kid with Tourette and I'm going to be an adult with Tourette. I thought this was going to go away. Like, I'm not saying this to freak people out, but, you can be an adult with Tourette and it's going to be okay. It's like living with an extra toe. I mean, it's not... there can be struggles, but I think the hardest part is going to be for the children and the teenagers. The college transition might be a little rocky at first, but living as an adult with TS is definitely going to be easier than living as a kid with Tourette syndrome.
Well, you have more place.
I missed what you said, Kaylee.
So, I forgot.
Okay, sorry, I kind of interrupted there. Yeah, so I know a fair number of adults with TS because I work in a TS research lab. Yes, I do. My lab is the lab I work in specializes in TS. All their studies are on TS. The neurologist who heads up the lab, 50% of his patients have TS. He has TS himself, and
that's cool.
Yeah, I work with
there.
What?
I wanted to go there. I envy you.
Yeah, so the head of the lab and the neurologist has TS. And
That
also,
is so cool.
yeah, and
I'm sorry, I can't get over
Ellen, who I
that.
work with, who's like 10 years older than I am. She has TS as well. So there's 3 of us in the lab who have TS. counting me.
And you're researching Tourette's?
And we're researching Tourette's.
Oh my gosh, that is awesome!
I love it. I love it. And
You don't even need to come to camp anymore. You just got camp with you all the time now.
It's like science Tourette's camp.
yeah,
I want
kind
to
of.
go. I want to trade places with you now.
Kind of.
You should consider transferring there.
What?
Go to school. I've so got to go now.
Yeah, so I also, I've been running my own study all year, and the second semester I've been running subjects with TS. So every few weeks a new person with TS will come in, and I'll do little interviews with them, and they'll do questionnaires, and then they'll do a computer task as well. And I've run a fair amount of subjects who are adults with TS who have pretty, noticeable symptoms, pretty, one of the adults I ran with TS, she has very noticeable symptoms, and she's an English teacher, a high school English teacher, and she is so marvelously. She's so confident. She, doesn't let her TS get in her way at all, just lives her life, as an adult with noticeable, significant symptoms.
Noticeable.
They just don't interfere with her life because she doesn't let them.
That's awesome. That's so cool. I kind of wish that they did a promotional video for the lab you work at, just so that we can feel inspired and obsessively replay it over and over and over again. I love this pterodactyl tick that you're having right now.
Yes, it's my pterodactyl from, well, yeah.
Have you heard of the pterodactyl game? It's like,
I'm like, no, it's going to make me tick again when I see that.
Pterodactyl.
Yeah, my friend plays that game like all the time.
I hate that it has a silent P in it. It doesn't make any sense. It bothers me. I try to pronounce it.
No.
Did you just tell me no, or did you tick no?
That was a tick.
Well, I think we can cut off the broadcast and just socialize now. Thank you all for watching. I have no idea how long this broadcast has been. It's probably been a long time. That's awesome, Kaylee. Do you guys want to say goodbye to the broadcast?
Bye.
Thank you for watching. Pterodactyl.